He walked away without a second thought. No fight, no questions, just cold, empty silence after I told him I was done. I wanted a battle, a sign that he cared enough to fight for me. Instead, I got nothing. A nod, a dismissive glance, and then he was gone. 6 months later, that brutal moment still tears at my chest like a fresh wound. I'm Samantha, 26, and this whole mess began the day I blew up my own relationship. Spoiler alert, I didn't just burn bridges, I torched the whole damn thing. Donovan and I had been together for a year and a half. Serious. We survived meeting the families. His mum bombarded me with recipes. His dad always saved me the biggest slice of dessert. And his sister Chloe treated me like the cool older sister she wished she had. Holidays, weekend trips, even whispered talks about moving in together. We were building a future, brick by steady brick. Then I dropped the bomb and everything went up in flames. But here's the kicker about solid and steady. Sometimes it just felt boring, predictable. We had our routines, our favorite Thai place, our Sunday morning coffee ritual. It was comfortable, safe. But where was the fire, the all-consuming passion I saw splashed across my social media feeds? My friends were constantly posting these epic sagas, boyfriends surprising them with lavish getaways, writing heartfelt, slightly off-key songs, or staging dramatic airport reconciliations after some manufactured fight. It was like a highlight reel of romantic grandiosity, and I felt a bitter pang of envy. Meanwhile, Donovan was just Donovan, reliable. He showed up when he promised. He remembered my coffee order and my aversion to cilantro. He was genuinely kind to my friends. But I started to fixate on this nagging question. Would he fight for me? Would he move mountains, or at least a smallish hill, if he thought he was losing me? I'd scroll through Instagram, mesmerized by these over-the-top displays of devotion, and a nasty little seed of doubt took root. How do you truly know someone loves you unless they're forced to prove it, to go to battle for your heart? Donovan, I reasoned, had never really been tested. I'd made it too easy for him. That thought burrowed deep, festering, until I couldn't ignore it. So I chose a Tuesday, a completely unremarkable Tuesday evening. We'd had a perfectly pleasant weekend, nothing groundbreaking, but certainly no arguments. The sheer unexpectedness, I figured, would amplify the drama, make him realize the gravity of the situation, and thus the urgency with which he needed to win me back. I meticulously rehearsed my lines in front of the mirror, practicing a look of profound sadness mixed with steely determination. I invited him over to my apartment, my stage set for the performance of a lifetime. I was about to uncover the true measure of Donovan's love, or so I convinced myself. He arrived, relaxed and unsuspecting, leaning in for his usual hello kiss. I turned my head at the last second, offering my cheek instead. Confusion flickered across his face. Perfect, I thought, a smug little thrill coursing through me. He already senses something's amiss. This is going to be spectacular, I began, my voice carefully modulated to sound somber, definitive. Donovan, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us. He watched me, his brow furrowed slightly. I continued, and I don't think this is working anymore. I think we should break up. I delivered the line and held my breath, bracing for the emotional onslaught I'd envisioned. The shock, the denial, the desperate pleas. In my mental screenplay, he was supposed to look like his world had shattered. Tears would well in his eyes. He'd stammer, "What went wrong, Sam? Tell me what you need. I love you. We can fix this." But that's not what happened. Not even close. Donovan just stared at me for a long, unnerving moment. His expression shifted from surprise, not to devastation, but to something else. Something disconcertingly calm, almost resigned. Then he spoke. He simply said, "Okay, just that." Okay, like I'd informed him the dry cleaners was closed. I gaped at him, waiting. Surely there was more. A follow-up question, a strangled sob, anything. But he just sat there, a strange stillness about him, as if processing a minor inconvenience. No tears, no begging, no desperate inquiries about why. Just quiet, infuriating acceptance. My stomach plummeted. This wasn't the scene I'd meticulously blocked in my head. I finally managed, my voice betraying my disbelief. "That's it?" He blinked. "Just okay." He stated after a moment, "I think I should go. I'll box up anything of yours that might be at my place. You can pick it up whenever, or I can drop it off." That's when genuine panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my indignation. He was actually leaving. This wasn't a bluff. This was real. My voice rose, laced with a desperation I hadn't anticipated. "So that's it? You're just going to walk out after everything?" Donovan paused at the door, his hand on the knob, and looked back at me. His face was unreadable. "You said you wanted to break up, Samantha. I'm respecting your decision. What else am I supposed to do?" I shouted then, desperate to wound him, to provoke any kind of emotional reaction. "You're a cold-hearted jerk. You were just using me this whole time. You never really loved me at all, did you?" He just shook his head, a weary sigh escaping him. "I'm not going to do this, Samantha. I'm not going to engage in this. When you're ready to have an honest conversation, let me know, but I don't play games." And then he was gone. He actually left. No dramatic pleas, no tearful declarations, no grand cinematic gestures. He just walked away, as if I hadn't just obliterated what I thought was our future. I spent that night oscillating wildly between sobs of frustration and seething anger, my eyes glued to my phone, willing it to ring, to buzz with a text from him. It remained silent. By morning, I'd twisted his calm reaction into further proof of my initial, flawed hypothesis. He didn't love me enough. A man truly, madly, deeply in love would never, ever let a woman go that easily, right? The silence from his end was deafening, confirming my worst self-inflicted fears. The next few days were a torturous blur of phantom phone vibrations and disappointed glances at a blank screen. A sickening knot of regret began to tighten in my stomach. Had I made a colossal, irreversible mistake? But my pride, that stubborn, foolish shield, wouldn't let me even whisper the thought aloud. Not yet. 1 month post-breakup, the silence from Donovan was absolute. I'd run into a few mutual friends, and their reports were like little daggers to my heart. "He seems good," they'd say, with an infuriatingly casual air. Or even worse, "He asked about you. Hopes you're doing well." Hopes I'm doing well. He should be a devastated wreck, subsisting on ramen and regret. I decided then that passive aggression via social media wasn't cutting it. It was time for a more direct approach, an accidental encounter. I knew his routines, the artisanal coffee shop he frequented on Saturday mornings, the upscale grocery store with the surprisingly good cheese selection, his favorite independent bookstore with the grumpy cat. I began to strategically frequent these locations, dressed to the nines, hair perfectly coiffed, makeup flawless, ready for my close-up. After 3 excruciatingly uneventful attempts, one involving a near miss with a double espresso and a white silk blouse, it finally happened. I spotted him at the local farmer's market, intently examining a pile of heirloom tomatoes at a sun-drenched produce stand. My heart hammered against my ribs. Showtime. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my dress and approached, attempting an air of breezy nonchalance. I chirped, feigning shock, "Donovan, what a surprise seeing you here." He looked up, a flicker of genuine surprise in his eyes before his expression settled into a polite neutrality. "Samantha." "Hi." I moved a little closer, a practiced, winsome smile plastered on my face. "How have you been?" He continued, as if reading my misguided thoughts, talking about our relationship, about patterns I hadn't really noticed before, or maybe hadn't wanted to. I pressed, still clinging to that sliver of hope. "So, you're in therapy because of me? Because of us?" "Not exactly," he clarified, dashing my hopes with a calm precision. I'm in therapy because I realized I have a pattern of being drawn to women who test me instead of communicating directly. Women who expect me to be a mind reader. Women who, consciously or unconsciously, create problems so I can swoop in and solve them, thereby proving my devotion. My face flushed, a hot wave of shame washing over me. That's not what I... He went on, his voice still calm, but with an undeniable undercurrent of firmness. When you broke up with me as a test, Samantha, it was like a really loud wake-up call. I realized how unhealthy our dynamic had become. How I was constantly walking on eggshells, trying to anticipate your moods, to guess what you really wanted or needed, instead of you just telling me. I respect myself too much now to go back to that, he added, his gaze direct. If you genuinely care about someone, you don't play games with their feelings. You don't set them up to fail. I protested, my voice small. It wasn't a game. I needed to know you cared by hurting both of us, he countered, a hint of incredulity in his tone. That's not love, Samantha. That's insecurity. And honestly, it's exhausting. Tears pricked at my eyes, blurring the vibrant colors of the market stalls around us. So you're saying there's no chance for us? Not ever? Donovan sighed, a sound of genuine weariness. I'm saying I need someone who says what they mean and means what they say. Someone who doesn't use breaking up as a weapon or a manipulation tactic. I deserve that. He paid the vendor for his tomatoes, offered me a polite but distant, "Take care, Samantha," and walked away. Again. Only this time it felt infinitely more final. The casual cruelty of his politeness was a fresh kind of pain. I stood there, amidst the Saturday morning shoppers and the scent of fresh basil, feeling utterly hollowed out. He'd changed in the weeks we'd been apart. He seemed stronger, more centered, more certain of what he wanted, and, more importantly, what he didn't want. Meanwhile, I was still stuck in the same self-destructive loop, playing the same tired games and expecting, foolishly, a different outcome. For a fleeting, terrifying moment, a tiny voice whispered in the back of my mind, maybe you're the problem, Samantha. But that flicker of self-awareness was quickly extinguished. As I walked home alone, the humiliation coiling in my stomach, I began to rationalize, to twist the narrative once more. Donovan was being unreasonable, cold, unforgiving. So I'd made one mistake, a single lapse in judgment. Was he really going to throw away everything we'd built, everything we'd shared, over that? If he truly loved me, he would forgive me. He had to, right? This flawed logic, this desperate refusal to accept responsibility, was the catalyst for a downward spiral that would consume the next several weeks of my life, dragging me to a new, even more mortifying low. My friends, understandably, started to create distance. My conversations became a monotonous loop of Donovan, my brilliant plans to get him back, and my bewilderment at his continued resistance. Alyssa stopped returning my calls after I'd spent 45 minutes dissecting the hidden meaning behind a 2-word text he'd sent. My work suffered. I was late 3 times in a single week, my focus shot, having stayed up all night stalking his social media for clues and then sleeping through my alarm. My carefully constructed image was crumbling, revealing the frantic, obsessive person I was becoming. I showed up at his office building around closing time, clutching a small, tastefully wrapped gift, a ridiculously expensive pen, and a card filled with what I thought were witty and charming sentiments. I'd strategically worn his favorite dress of mine, a slinky emerald green number, and had spent hours on my hair and makeup. This, I was certain, would be the catalyst. This would remind him of what he was so foolishly missing. When he walked out of the building, deep in conversation with a colleague, and saw me waiting by the entrance, his expression wasn't pleased surprise. It wasn't even mild annoyance. It was wary, resigned, like a man spotting an oncoming migraine. He stopped, his colleague excusing himself with a curious glance in my direction. "Samantha," he asked, his voice low and tight, his eyes darting around uncomfortably as other employees streamed past. "What are you doing here?" I plastered on my brightest, most winsome smile, holding out the gift like a peace offering. "I heard about your promotion. I just wanted to congratulate you in person. I'm so proud of you." His jaw tightened. "Samantha, this isn't appropriate. I asked you to give me space, but I'm just being friendly," I insisted, a tremor of panic running through me as I saw my meticulously planned scene beginning to unravel. "We can still be friends, can't we?" "No, Samantha," he stated, his voice firm, unequivocal. "We can't. Not right now. Maybe not ever." She asked, her voice concerned. "Donovan, is everything all right? Should I call security?" Security. The word, the implication, hit me like a physical blow. The shame was a suffocating wave. I had become that woman, the crazy ex making a public spectacle, harassing him at his place of work. The expensive pen slipped from my nerveless fingers, clattering onto the pavement. I turned and fled, tears of mortification and rage streaming down my face, the curious, pitying stares of his co-workers burning into my back. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A text from Donovan. It was short, cold, and utterly devastating. "Samantha, do not contact me again, in person, by phone, by text, social media, or any other means. If you do, I will have to take more formal steps to enforce this boundary." 6 months. 6 long, agonizing months had passed since the breakup. An invitation arrived for a housewarming party thrown by mutual friends, Taylor and Ben. A flicker of anxiety, mixed with a perverse kind of anticipation, sparked within me. There was a definite chance Donovan might be there. I'd been a social recluse for so long, turning down every invitation, that I decided, with a surge of reckless bravado, to risk it. Besides, I told myself I looked good. The stress-induced weight loss had, ironically, left me looking leaner, and I'd splurged on a new dress, a fiery red one, specifically for occasions where a chance encounter with Donovan might occur. I arrived fashionably late, of course, aiming for an entrance that would, I hoped, turn a few heads, his included. Taylor greeted me with her usual warmth, though I thought I detected a fleeting, unreadable expression in her eyes. She led me towards the makeshift bar in their new, stylishly decorated living room. As I scanned the crowded space, a knot of nervous energy tightening in my chest, that's when I saw him. Donovan was standing by the large picture window, bathed in the soft evening light, laughing at something someone had said. But it wasn't just any someone, it was a woman. A woman I didn't recognize. She was pretty, in an understated, effortless kind of way, with a genuine, radiant smile that actually reached her eyes. My breath hitched. Trying to sound casual, like it was the most unimportant question in the world, I asked Taylor, nodding subtly in their direction. "Who's that with Donovan?" Taylor's smile didn't falter, but her eyes held a new awareness. "Oh, that's Rachel, Donovan's girlfriend. They've been dating for a couple of months now. She's really cool, actually. I think you'll like her." A voice murmured beside me. "They look good together, don't they?" I jumped, startled, and turned to find Megan, Donovan's sister, watching me with a knowing, almost pitying look in her eyes. I managed, trying to sound indifferent, I guess. "If you like that sort of thing, he's happy," Megan stated simply, her gaze unwavering. "Happier than I've seen him in a very long time." The unspoken implication hung heavy in the air between us. "Happier than when he was with you." "Good for him," I said, my voice tighter than I intended. Megan took a slow sip of her drink. "You know," she said, her tone conversational but with an underlying edge, "the whole story eventually came out. About why you two really broke up." My stomach plummeted. "What do you mean?" "Your test," she clarified, her eyes holding mine. "How you broke up with him just to see if he'd fight for you. I might have mentioned it to Taylor a few months back after everything. And you know how news travels in this group. A wave of cold horror washed over me as I suddenly understood the strange, pitying glances some people at the party had been throwing my way all evening. They all knew. They knew I was the toxic ex. The one who played manipulative mind games. The one who orchestrated her own downfall. I began, my voice weak. That's not exactly how it happened. Megan cut me off, not unkindly, but firmly. Save it, Samantha. I'm not telling you to be cruel. I'm just telling you so you understand. So you understand why some doors, some friendships, might be permanently closed to you now. She gave a small, sad smile and walked away, leaving me standing alone, clutching my wineglass like a lifeline, the cheerful party chatter around me fading into a dull roar. Across the room, Donovan and Rachel were preparing to leave. They moved through the crowd, saying their goodbyes, laughing easily with friends. He hadn't spoken a single word to me all night, hadn't even made eye contact, hadn't acknowledged my presence in any way. As they passed near where I stood, on their way to the door, Rachel, his lovely, effortlessly cool girlfriend, offered me a polite, friendly smile. She had no idea who I was, just another guest at a party. And then, for a fraction of a second, Donovan's eyes met mine. There was no anger there, no resentment, not even a flicker of discomfort or awkwardness. There was nothing. Complete, utter indifference. I had become a stranger to him, a ghost from a past he had clearly and happily moved on from. I asked, genuinely hoping to reconnect, to mend at least one broken bridge. "How are you, Alyssa?" "Busy," she replied, her eyes avoiding mine as she added sugar to her coffee. "Look, I should really get going." "Wait," I said, a sudden desperate need to know clawing at me. Have you heard anything about Donovan? About how he's doing?" Alyssa sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. "Samantha, you need to move on." "He has." "Clearly." "I know," I mumbled, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "With Rachel. Perfect Rachel." "They're engaged," Alyssa said, her voice flat, devoid of any real emotion. "He proposed last weekend, at that little Italian place he used to take you to." The news hit me with the force of a physical blow. Engaged. After just 6 or 7 months together. We had been together for a year and a half, and he'd never even hinted at marriage, never even brought it up as a distant possibility. As I watched Alyssa walk out of the coffee shop, leaving me alone with my lukewarm latte and the crushing weight of this final revelation, the full, devastating magnitude of what I had lost finally crashed down on me. Not just Donovan, but friends, respect, trust. My professional reputation, all sacrificed on the altar of my own destructive pride and crippling insecurity. For the very first time, without any caveats or justifications, I had to confront the undeniable, unbearable truth. I had been wrong. My test wasn't some harmless, quirky way to gauge Donovan's feelings. It was a deeply manipulative, toxic power play that had revealed far more about my own flawed character than it ever could have about his. But even as this devastating realization settled in, a pathetic little voice still whispered, if only he'd understood what I really meant. If only he hadn't overreacted. If only he'd just fought for me, none of this would have happened. If only he'd given me a second chance. I still couldn't fully, completely own my mistake. I couldn't accept, deep down, that the consequences I was now facing, the profound loneliness, the tarnished reputation, the shattered relationships, the stalled career, were entirely, unequivocally, of my own making. And that, I suppose, is why even now, 6 months after seeing him happy and engaged, I'm still alone. Still watching from the periphery as life, vibrant and full of promise, goes on without me. Donovan is building a future with Rachel, a future I threw away. My former friends have moved on, forging healthier connections. My career is stagnant, my reputation for untrustworthiness a shadow that follows me. All because I broke up with him just to see if he'd fight for me, and he didn't even ask why, he just walked away. And as it turns out, walking away from me was the smartest, sanest, healthiest thing he could have possibly done. For him. Never ever for me.